Hey, welcome back to the Big Red Zone. We are very excited for today's show. We have the Brockton Rox manager and current coach at Plymouth State, Andy Terrio, is here. We talk about our time together, his time in independent ball, the current state of the Red Sox with the trade deadline coming up, and much, much more. All this on this week's episode of the Big Red Zone. Welcome to the podcast. It's Big Red Zone. I'm your host, Big Red. Welcome back to James, off for a couple weeks. Welcome back. Producer John. And we want to say thank you for all the love and support we've gotten for the last episode and our past episodes. Reminder, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Big Red Zone. Also on YouTube, look us up, Big Red Zone. If you're watching this video, hit the like button and subscribe. We also have a very special guest today. He is the recent manager of the Brockton Rox. He's also a coach at Plymouth State and a longtime friend. Andy Terrio is here. Welcome, Andy.
What's up, guys?
Andy, great to see you again. I know that you recently coached at the Brockton Rox and you're a coach, obviously, at Plymouth State. But you started your career playing indie ball. So tell us a little bit about your experience there playing for the North Shore Spirit.
Yeah, man, a lot of fun. Have a lot of family on the North Shore, so for me it was a great opportunity to play close to home in a pretty good league at the time. There were a handful of guys that went on to play affiliated baseball out of that league. Made a ton of friends in the game that are still in the game now, that are colleagues, whether it's coaches or athletic directors or performance coaches. So for me, it was just a great opportunity to get my foot in the door with professional baseball, and that certainly has opened a lot of doors for me.
Now, indie ball, there's a lot of it's professional baseball. There's a lot of fun moments there. Is there anything that stands out to you that from those? There's probably a ton, but is there any memories that you have that stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I think, for me, it was, there were a handful of guys in that league that I remember from my childhood. Like Wilton Veras was a name that when I was a younger guy, Wilton Veras was going to be like the heir apparent for the Boston Red Sox at their base. He was going to take over for John Valentin. And that year in the league, he was playing for the New Jersey Jackals. So for me, it was really cool to think about a guy that as a child, I remember hearing the name and to see him across the diamond for me. And Rich Garces was playing for the Nashville Pride that year. So it was cool to get a chance to see some of those guys that I remembered from when I was younger that were at the end of their careers. And then just the day-to-day, man, being in the clubhouse with the guys, there's so much stuff that happens that's what you really miss when you're done playing.
And we got a chance. We talked a lot about, the old Can-Am League and different guys. And I remember when I used to go to games and eventually work for them, just some of the names that you wouldn't even think, you're right. It's like major league guys or major prospects that just happen to play in the league, and you get to see them. I remember Oil Can pitch for the Rox, and that was fun to kind of see him play. We did an all-time draft, and that's John's catcher for the Boston Red Sox. And different guy Eric Gagne in Quebec. There was some big names that you wouldn't think you'd either play against or play with. Right. And then for us, got to see play. And, we got to, Getty coach with us. We got to see, I got to meet his dad in Worcester. I never thought I'd get to meet him too. And all great people, and it was fun to meet those guys. Now there is one story that I know we talked about before, and it's, there's a bunch of firsts and careers. We had Bobby got his first home run yesterday, and you had an experience. Tell us about your first bench clear and brawl. I know this is a great story. This was a lot of fun. So we were playing Quebec City Capitals, and they had beaten us the year before I got to the team. They had beaten us, I think, in the championship series. It was a pretty contentious series. There were some incidences there. There was a play at the plate with a collision, and that led to a fight. So there was a lot of bad blood there with that team, and it was the first time that we were playing them this current season.
and it was not a close game. We were getting beat up pretty bad that night, and you could kind of just sense that something was going to happen. There was a play in like the 5th or 6th inning where there was a ground ball to third, and our third baseman was waiting to tag the runner coming at him, and he just slapped the ball out of his glove, a lot like the A-Rod Bronson Arroyo play. So that kind of got it going. So fast forward, I think it's about the 8th inning, and I'm sitting out in the pen, and they had Eddie Lantigua, who I don't know if you remember that name, Steve-O. Eddie Lantigua was like the Babe Ruth of Canadian Independent League Baseball. He played for like 25 years, has every record up there. So he's at the plate. We have a pitcher on the mound who fears no one. Pretty unique guy. And first pitch of the at-bat to Eddie, he buzzes him up and in. And you can see some of the guys in the pen were starting to stand up, and they were like, something's going to happen here. And you know, I'm locked in. I was fully locked in on the game, but
yeah.
So, you know, the very next pitch, he gets him right in the ribs. And Eddie stands there for a second, looks at our pitcher, charges the mound, and our bullpen empties. And now for me, this is the first time I've experienced this. I'm like, sweet, a fight. So I'm standing there, and then I look, I'm like, oh my God, I'm the only guy left in the bullpen. I better get out there. so I do the sprint down to the field, and by the time I got there, I was, you know, one of those periphery guys in the back that, you know, looks like a tough guy. I'm pulling everyone apart. But that was a lot of fun. It was, there was some interesting stuff going on in that fight. We had our center fielder made it all the way in from center field, and he like army crawled through someone's legs to get to the middle of the pile, and he was throwing haymakers. I mean, it was wild. And I think the best part of the story was after the game, our clubby had gone over to Quebec's locker room, and when he came back and he goes, Eddie has 3 cleat marks and the Nike symbol in his chest, just because like guys are stomping, guys are kicking, guys are punching. It was an absolute Donnybrook. I mean, the North Shore fans were chanting USA because we're playing the team from Canada. So it was a wild environment for sure.
One of my favorite parts of that story too is, and if you want to find it, they can find this. They can find this brawl on YouTube. You can search it, but the fans are just crazy in that league. And wasn't it that they started chanting because they were playing Quebec against from Canada? They were chanting USA on the.
They were chanting
USA during the fight because it was a home game for you.
It was a home game for us. So yeah, the fans were chanting USA, USA, USA. Yeah,
it was just absolutely bedlam for like 12 minutes, and then all of a sudden you hear the USA coming from the fan section. It was wild. I think there were like 12 ejections. Like half of our pitching staff got thrown out. Our catcher, like they had like 7 guys thrown out. It was great. So the best part about it was there's a video on YouTube now, and I'm in there for like a split second. Like there's like a 3-second clip where I'm standing off to the side, like holding a guy back, and before I started coaching at Plymouth State, I was coaching high school baseball. And one day we were driving to a game, and it was so funny. Our guys were like watching baseball fight videos on the bus, and like terrific, just what we need. And one of the guys comes up to me and he's like, "Hey coach," and he has like the freeze frame. And he's like, "Is this you?" And I'm like, "Oh great, I got to explain myself now to a bunch of high school kids." No, it wasn't you.
Yeah, I was like, "No, that was my twin brother."
They're like, I remember there was the brawl thing is like, especially when you're down there, it's just such a crazy thing to watch. And especially that, like, you're like you said, you're a fan watching it and you're like, oh man, there's a brawl going on right now. And then all of a sudden everyone's rushing out and you're like, oh my. I remember we were in, I was a bat boy for them. I was younger, and we were in Pittsfield, and there was a, play at the plate. It wasn't even really that bad. And the catcher thought he collided with him, and he was out. And when our guy was lying on the ground, he picked up the ball, and I think I told you the story, dropped the ball right on the guy that one of our guys. And out of nowhere, everyone started like sprinting out of the dugout. And there was a huge brawl at home plate. And then I'm like, I don't know, I'm like 15 years, probably like 12 to 15 range. I'm like a freshman in high school, and I'm watching these guys just go at it from the dugout. It was like wild. It's fun, but it
is. We had a wild one too. So our bullpen that year we were a pretty eclectic group of guys, and right after the national anthem, we would line up and we would run a football play with a baseball. We would have like play 4-on-4. and we were playing the Worcester Tornadoes at Worcester.
Yeah.
So they were in the field to start the game. The national anthem goes, and we run our football play. And we run it, and our guy catches a touchdown out in center field. And it was like well known around the league. Like we just did it, and no one had an issue with it. And that day, our guy caught the touchdown and was standing there, and the center fielder from Worcester just came over and trucked our guy, like steamrolled him in the middle of center field. The game, now mind you, the game hasn't started yet. The starting pitcher is still throwing his warm-ups. So our bullpen sprints out to center, their bullpen sprints to center, all the position players sprint out to center, and the umpires are standing there with their hands in the air going, what the hell is going on? Like, so we had bullpens and benches cleared into center field prior to first pitch.
Only you, Andy, only you would be in that situation.
I know, man. It was straight shenanigans.
Ludicrous.
Unreal, man.
But it truly is. Like we the Rox were in the Can-Am League for a long time, so I got to see a lot of those, Eddie Lantigua, those kind of guys that were legends, and there was a lot of moments like that were just like you'd shake your head and be, especially in the clubhouse after like getting to be in the clubhouse for a couple years, it was just like nothing but laughs and like a good time that was even just for me. It was like young kid who's just working there. Everyone there was great. I remember
it was good. It was good baseball too.
Yeah, it was awesome. And like we said, there was like the Red Sox top third baseman prospect was playing in that towards the end of his career, but still, you had like good players in that league, and we've seen players like Colabello, Delabar. I think Minikazi had a quick stint up there.
There was a guy who played for Nashua that year, Olmo Rosario. I believe he might have won the MVP, and Olmo hit like 370 for Nashua that year. He was a really good player, and he actually got picked up by the Giants the next year and was in the AA All-Star game. And Steve Palazzolo. So there were some guys that got picked up by affiliated teams, and whether or not they made it, I mean, Colabello is the name that we all know being New Englanders, but there were a handful of guys that got up to AA, AAA. We had a guy, Chris Farley, awesome name. I think he's a Western Mass guy. He pitched for us. He actually got picked up by the Yankees about halfway through the summer and ended up getting all the way up to AAA. So there were some pretty good success stories out of that league.
It's good. It was, like you said, it was good baseball. It was professional. So you had you had professionals in that league that were like, the way I would explain the Can-Am League was it's either young guys that are trying to make it into the league, or it's guys that have made it and just trying to play. It's usually that. And from that, you get really great veterans who know the game and are really good at the game, or guys that are really good that just need that breakout point. And it leads to great baseball. Like it's
for sure. I attribute a lot of my baseball acumen to a couple of guys. Like we had Luis Lopez, who played like 22 years of professional baseball between independent ball and affiliated ball. He actually made it up to the majors. He spent parts of, I think, 2 years in the big leagues. He was like a 2-time AAA MVP award winner. What a wealth of baseball knowledge to just be able to stand around the batting cage with that guy and talk hitting and talk the ins and outs of the game. I learned so much from him. And then Alex Trezza was another guy Alex is now the associate head coach at Boston College. Everything that I learned about being a catcher for the most part came from Al. He was so good to me. And I mean, just guys like that were the consummate professionals. That was the best part of that league for me.
Trez was a great guy. I'm glad you brought it. Trez, I knew he's like just a genuine person who talks to anyone. Like I would talk to him, like I said, young kid, bat boy, when I would be in their dugout. He would talk to me like I was, an adult. And we built up, it's the same guy. It's not like how it is now where the guys kind of, it changes out every year or so. And we built up that connection through those 3 or 4 years. And then when he coached for somewhere in the Futures League. Was it Worcester?
I want to say it was Worcester for a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So we met, like talked there, and he's just a genuine, awesome guy. And, but yeah, it's like smart baseball guys in that league.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, as I mentioned, now you're coaching for the Rox. who you used to play, which is kind of funny, which I think that happens a lot with like the managers and stuff and coaches, like especially in the beginning. Like we had the first manager of the Brockton Rox team when they switched to collegiate was Thigpen Judd.
Okay. Yep.
And so that was kind of cool to see him now manager. And Brad Hertzler he was a pitcher for the Rox for a while. But you see that now in that league, especially a lot of guys that are former players at that time of like the Can-Am League. And now it's kind of starting, like we saw with Sheik, like former players in the Futures League are starting to coach. So how was it making that transition now, coaching against a team that you played against, coaching for a team that you played against, and coaching in general, like being a manager?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, for me, I remember coming to Brockton and coming to Campanelli as a player when I was in the Can-Am League, and I just remember loving Campanelli Stadium. It's one of the best venues, in my opinion, in all of New England. So to be able to come to Brockton, and there's just so many good people there. I mean, you've been in the organization for so long, Steve-O. I mean, there's good people to work for, and it's it's a pretty unique situation, and I couldn't be happier to be in Brockton. And as far as, making the move to managing now, I mean, it was something that for me, I knew I wanted to do when I finished playing. I just didn't know when that was going to be for me. I had an injury kind of end my playing days sooner than I'd hoped or wanted. And so for me, it was the next step in my baseball life was to become a coach. And, I genuinely enjoy being around the field. I enjoy being around the players. I like watching them go through their successes and failures and helping them navigate those waters. So for me, I love it. It's I don't think there's a better job in the world. I couldn't be happier with what I do.
And those experiences that, like you said, like the locker room experience, the play, like being around the guys every day, that just continued. And I know from being around you, that just continued into your coaching. Like it was just kind of like you made all those fun memories like you did in playing and coaching. Is there any like things that stand out to you over the last few years that you've coached in Brockton that stand out, like anything fun? That I have a couple in my mind, but I want to hear what you have to like, what you think.
I mean, there's nothing like specific that comes to mind for me. It's honestly, it's the day to day. Like I just love getting up every day and knowing that I'm going to the ballpark and I try not to put myself in the locker room too much. I mean, for me, that's the players area. That's where they get to do their thing. Every once in a while, I'll pop my head out there and I'll throw a wisecrack at someone, but just watching the guys like go about, their day to day and watching them interact with each other. It just, for me, every time I see it, it brings back good memories for me of when I was a player and I was doing that with my buddies. So I don't want to put myself in there too much because that's their area, but I just love watching those guys get to interact with one another and learn from each other. And there's always some good ball busting going on in the locker room, which is great.
So like what stands, like something that I remember from like over the last few years is it's not, like you said, nothing specific, but it's those late night in the coach's room, like after the game, after, we just had a big win and we're excited after a big loss and we're depressed. And just talking like, I'd be there late and we had a lot, especially this year, being late and doing like the laundry and doing some last minute late night things. We would sit there and talk for hours about baseball, about life, about how we felt about the team, how they were doing at a certain time. And that's just something that I take out from, like, if I stopped working there and stopped working in baseball or sports, that's the stuff that I kind of remember most is those conversations, like late night and with you, with the Getty, like all the Sheik, Tom, like all the guys, like that's something that I remember and I'll remember for, for the rest of my life. You know what I mean?
No doubt. There are a lot of good conversations. I mean, think about how many times this summer we decided that we were either the best team in the world or the worst team in the world. I mean, there was no in between. We were never just like an okay team. We were either an absolute wagon that was never going to lose, or we were the worst team to ever put on a baseball uniform. So, you're right though. Like those are the things that for me now, you're right. I take away, like I said, just the day to day to be able to sit in there after a big comeback win, after a loss or after a huge win for us. And then we're scoreboard watching and we're watching a team come back from 4 runs down in the 9th inning when we need them to lose and they end up winning the game. And you just like, you're on that high of, we just had our biggest win of the summer. the team that we need to lose is losing by 4 in the ninth, and then they score 5 in the ninth, and you're like, what the heck just happened? So just all of those memories for me are the things that, that's what I mean by like the day to day. I love just sitting in there after the game and hanging out with the guys.
I remember also we did a lot of, we did it, not a lot, I would say a few times over like the last few years, but late night BP was also one of my favorite times. We'd just take hacks. We were all probably, haven't swung a bat in a year. And then Tom would always hurt his back. You would pull something in your shoulder. I couldn't make it out of the infield.
We're all a little too old to be doing that. But those are always good times. And we certainly would remember it the next morning when we tried to get out of bed and everything was creaking.
Now, you're at Plymouth State too. Is there any parallels that you have between like summer ball and Plymouth State, or is it kind of different? Because I know it's a different. Summer ball is about kind of getting better and like improving and working on your craft. And, when you get into the season, you're doing that, but it's more focused on, we got to win, what's ahead of us. But is there any like specific differences you feel like coaching wise?
I try to be the same guy every day, but there are definitely some differences. For me, like you said, at school, there's a pressure that we have to win, Right. In summer ball, I certainly, as competitive as I am, I want to win every day. But when I'm coaching in summer ball, it's, my primary goals are, number one, nobody gets hurt. Like I just can't afford to have someone get hurt and then have to call their school and tell them they're injured. Number two is their individual development. Like that's why they're there. And then number three is winning games. If we win games, that's fantastic. At school, those goals kind of shift a little bit. I think, one, we're still trying to make sure no one gets hurt, and two, we're trying to develop our guys because we need them to perform. But the winning is a lot more, that's a bigger deal at school because we have to win. That's why we're there. There's always the chance that you're going to get fired if you're not performing. So, for us, I try to be the same guy every day, though. I'm a big believer in trying to be even keeled. I don't want guys to know that I'm too high, too low. I think the biggest similarity for me is I try to connect with every single guy as best I can. I feel like if you can develop some good interpersonal relationships with your guys, they're going to be more comfortable and more apt to perform at a high level. So is what I would say is the biggest similarity. Yeah, the biggest difference is just the order of the goals and what we were trying to achieve. I think at school, winning is pretty close to number one while still maintaining health and development. But in summer ball, if you win, great. If you lose, whatever. But I'm still trying to win. I'm a believer that you can't develop as an individual without playing to win. So I do think that you should play to win in summer ball, but that's certainly a little bit more on the back burner compared to their health and development.
Right. And of course, like everyone's competitive guy. Like if you're playing a sport, more than likely if you're any good at it, you're going to be super competitive and play to win the game. But like you said, I think I kind of have that sense by looking at it from an outside perspective because I've never played college baseball and I don't coach college baseball. So from the outside looking in and looking at the summer ball, it's like everyone wants to win, but it's more about getting through the season, improving, staying healthy. And then when you go to school, you have to perform and, try to win. You have to win games.
For sure.
So is there any fun, like, I know we're talking about, that's like, I feel like baseball, especially like our time, like working in the Rox and stuff like that is like, it's just memories and stuff like that. Do you find yourself with the same kind of thing with Plymouth as summer ball? Because summer ball is very relaxed. Like we said, it's very relaxed environment. Do you find that in that sometimes tense situation of Plymouth State or any coaching, like high school or college experience, do you have any of those like loose moments that you have, like you said, connected with the guys day to day? Is there anything that stands out to you in that time?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, just getting back to those interpersonal relationships, I love walking the field during BP. If I'm not throwing, I'll just go out in the outfield and have a conversation, even more so at Plymouth than in summer ball, because at Plymouth, these are guys that we recruit from the time they're sophomores or juniors in high school. So you're really fostering relationships with guys, and then you have them for 4 years. And so for me, it's just walking around, talking to guys, asking them how their studies are going, what, if they're an older guy, what their job prospects look like. So for me, it's just getting a chance to see those guys from the time they're maybe 16 years old until they leave us at 21, 22, 23. And, looking back on their successes and failures as young men and how they're going to go off into the world. So I think for me, I'm just going into year 3 at Plymouth now. So I don't have as many of those memories as I do with the Rox, who I've been with for 4 years. But, I think a guy, my first year at Plymouth, we had a senior, David Sampson, who was a big time recruit for us. And he was, I believe he was an all-conference pitcher as a freshman. And then he just had a ton of injury setbacks. His senior year was just a complete grind for him to get on the mound every time as our 8th inning guy, 9th inning guy. He would throw, and then it was like he'd be in a training room for 10 days trying to get ready to throw again. And on senior day, our last home game of the year, he started against our biggest rival. And having only thrown like 7 innings on the season to that point, he threw a complete game. So for me, like, that was just like a moment that I'm going to hang on to. Like, that guy was, after his freshman year, was a potential professional pitcher. He was an all-conference guy. And then it just didn't go the way he wanted to. And then to watch how much of a struggle it was for him in his senior year to get on the mound, that day on senior day, to see him go out and throw the complete game was pretty special for me. And I know that it's a moment that kid's going to hold pretty close to his heart for the rest of his life. So just things like that. I mean, yeah. You love seeing guys have success.
That's that's a really cool story, an unbelievable moment for you and that kid. Real quick, as we are kind of shifting gears into, MLB and Celtics talk, is there any shout outs that you want to make? Any plugs? Plymouth State, yourself, boost that Instagram that you're trying to get going?
Steve, I'm a pretty humble guy. Here.
All right. Go follow, at least plug your program, for the love of God.
Follow the Plymouth State baseball program on Instagram and Twitter. But yeah, don't worry about following me. I'm a regular guy.
All right. Follow Plymouth State. And don't follow Andy.
Plymouth State baseball. Give us a follow, Steve-O.
All right, will do. Pod's following after the show. Shifting gears now, we'll start with baseball in the MLB. You grew up a Red Sox fan, right?
Yes, sir.
What's your current – we'll get to the trades and stuff like that in a second, but what's your current opinion of the Red Sox right now? I know it's not good, but what's your –
It's tough. It's tough to watch, Steve-O. I tell you what, I've had a hard time sitting down and watching a game. The pitching is just so bad right now. But unfortunately, this is life in professional sports. There's so many ebbs and flows, and it's hard to think about where the Red Sox were less than 24 months ago when they were the greatest season in franchise history, and now to be as low as we've been, at least in my lifetime that I can remember. Yeah. I mean, you expect that maybe at some point, but not less than 24 months after winning whatever it was, 108 games and winning the World Series pretty easily. Yeah, it's tough right now. I know that, there's a new group there with Hein Bloom, and he's got his work cut out for him. And I think, we have to give him time. I know that, on social media, you see a lot of people trash him for making this trade or not making that trade or signing this guy, not signing that guy. I mean, he's looking at it from a big picture as a guy who just came into the organization. He has to do some evaluating.
Right.
It's tough right now, but I'm going to wear those colors forever. So I'll keep tuning in and just know that, better days are ahead for sure, hopefully.
I think you said something very important with Bloom. A lot of people are like really angry with him, but he came here, he's doing what he came here to do, and that's to clean up the cat. Like, he's a money saver guy. He's like, we brought in Dombrowski to win us a championship and spend.
Which
and he did. He succeeded. We won. Now we're kind of paying the price, but he came here to win a championship. He won us a championship. Like, I have no ill will towards Dombrowski whatsoever. We knew what we signed up for when we brought him on as a general manager. Exactly. With Bloom, it should be the same thing. He's rebuilding our farm system. He's getting rid of some of the big contracts that we had to clear up, get under the luxury tax. And like, I'm not surprised in what he's doing. Like, there's been a couple moves that like I would have liked something more, but he's, like you said, he's looking at the big picture. He's trying to build up the farm system, trying to get a bunch of guys in there. Maybe down the line we can use them like we did before to get, a Chris Sale type guy who's going to be our ace, or not a Mookie Betts, but like a big bat to come in, clear the cap so we can sign one of these big free agents, because it's not going to be hard to sign a big free agent to Boston. Boston's a high market team, so it's not like if you're the Royals and you let go Mookie Betts, like it's gonna like a homegrown guy. It's gonna be harder to sign someone that's a big name than the Red Sox would. Red Sox can stink and they're still going to be able to sign a big free agent. Sure. So I'm not. Like you said, I think you got to give Bloom time, give him a couple of years to try to rebuild it and see what he does. But I'm jumping into like the trade talks. The one guy that I'm hearing is the Vasquez, and I'm not a big fan of that. Do you think
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that trade either. I just don't think that there's the catcher of the future in the system right now, unless their goal is to move Vasquez and you hope to get one or two impact prospects, and then you go out and sign a guy like JT Realmuto next year in free agency. I could see them making a play for that, but I have a hard time. It's tough anytime you trade a homegrown guy. Like losing Mookie is tough because that's a guy that you drafted in the 5th round. He wasn't really a prospect. Same thing with Vasquez. I mean, I remember watching Vasquez in Portland. As when I was in my mid-20s or late 20s, I went to a game in Portland, and I remember seeing that guy and being like, "Wow, this guy's good." Now he's won a World Series, so it's hard to trade those guys. But that's one move that I'm not really a fan of, just because he's affordable. But I guess again, you have to see what the return is. If you're able to get two potential impact guys, then I think it's a move you make. Yeah. With the idea that you're going to reset the luxury tax and maybe you go make a run at a guy like JT Realmuto. But I think it's hard to replace catching. I think it's hard to replace shortstop. That's why they're talking about Bogarts too. And it's it's terrible. There's not a shortstop of the future in the system that's at least a couple of years away. Right. I'm a believer that you build your team up the middle of the diamond. So why trade an affordable catcher who's on a team-friendly deal unless you're going to net 2 or 3 impact guys? But hopefully they hang on to Vasquez. If not, we'll see what happens. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned Bogarts, because I'm the same way. Catcher, shortstop, those guys are guys that you do not trade away because they're so few and far between, especially with Bogarts, who's both a defensive guy and an offensive guy. Like, it's very – Francisco Lindor, like, that's the only other – like, trying to think of shortstops that kind of relate to him in the game right now, is like those two are like the top guys, I think, in the league at shortstop. And for sure. I mean, he's an absolute stud. I mean, we saw it. Think about what he did that first World Series in 2013 as a 21-year-old. I mean, you could tell right away from day one that guy was going to be special. And I mean, last year he had almost 120 RBIs. Like, you're not replacing that kind of production. Right. At that position, for sure. Like you said, he's a homegrown guy. Like, there's something to be said about, like, you can find a bunch of guys, like, get a bunch of big free agents in here and a bunch of, like, grizzled veterans in here, and that's going to help you win. But you need a core of homegrown guys in the system that know what the team's about, grown up through the system, know the ownership, know the people, and having those guys like Bogey, Devers, Vasquez to kind of go through, and one of your outfielders that have been here since being drafted, is just so important to make I think personally, to make a championship run at and be successful in the league. Agreed. Yeah, I'm a big believer in the Red Sox, like you talked about earlier, the Red Sox being a big market team. There's no reason that you should be getting rid of all of your homegrown talent. Like, you've already lost Mookie Betts, who, as you mentioned, you're able to replace that because you can open the checkbook a little bit. But still, I feel like if you're the Boston Red Sox, you should be able to afford to retain some of your homegrown talent. So I'd hate to see him move on from Bogarts. Bogarts and Vasquez, to me, are the two guys that I'd like to see them hang on to the most. Yeah. But I understand there's a market, just like we talked about. You want to build your team at those two positions. There's probably a lot of teams that are contenders right now that could use upgrades there. So if they're willing to pay a high price, I can see making that move. But those would be a couple of ones that hurt for sure. Now that you mentioned, is there anyone else that's on your not trade list going into the deadline? I don't think so. I mean, there's nobody. I mean, the pitching staff is in shambles.
Yeah.
If someone wants to take some of those guys off our hands, please do. I mean, I would say maybe Darwinson, but I mean, we just haven't seen enough to know.
Yeah.
Is he a starter? Is he a reliever? Like we don't even know. So
I
think,
know what he is.
Yeah. So I don't even know that you're going to get the return that you would want for a guy like that. I'm a big fan of Michael Chavis, but if they were able to get an arm for him, I mean,
Right.
he might become kind of redundant with friend of the podcast, Bobby Dahlback, coming up now. It might be hard for Chavis to get some good runs. So for me, it's like Bogarts is the one guy I'd really, really like to retain. I think Verdugo is pretty close.
Verdugo, I think, is safe because unless you're getting like I said, not now, but like the Chris Sale type deal, you're getting an ace for him. There's no way they're trading him because he's the main piece in the Mookie trade. You can't just trade your guy for a bunch of prospects that you just traded Mookie away for.
Agreed.
So I don't think, and he's been good. He's been really good.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's gonna go. I think he's on that list that doesn't disappear too. I think he's gonna be here at the deadline as well.
I would hate to see him move on from Jackie too. I'm a big Jackie Bradley fan. I know that there's a lot of Jackie Bradley haters out there because he's never hit at the level that people want, but think about the teams that he's been on in Boston. He hasn't had to be more than the 7, 8, or 9 hitters. So if you're getting elite world-class defense at a premium position and nobody plays the position better than he does, and he hits 240 with 12 to 20 home runs, like what more can you want from that guy? It's not like he's making $25 million a year. Like you're getting a pretty good bang for your buck. So I'd hate to see them move on from Jackie, but at the same time, I think he's a little bit of a redundant player with Verdugo, with Benny, with some of the guys they have down on the farm, like Jaron Duran. I always butcher his name, but I like Jackie a lot, but if they moved on from Jackie, I would understand that move. But yeah, I think Bogey and Vasquez are the two guys that for me, I'd love to see him hang on to.
The only guy I'd add into that list of players is Devers. I would not move on from Devers now. Defensively, I think he's been atrocious, but offensively, he's a stud, and you can work with him defensively. I don't think JD's going to be here in the next few. I think he may accept the option just because he's had kind of a tough year, and he's going to get paid a lot of money, and then go into free agency and maybe sign again with the Red Sox, depending on the state of the team. So you could maybe slot him into the DH position and try to bring up somewhat. Bobby's, first position is third base, so maybe you move him back over to third. You find someone in the farm. They got a bunch of prospects now, the utility guys that play all around the diamond. So maybe they find someone in there. Chavis is a utility guy. You can slide anywhere. So maybe that's it. But I would include Devers in that list because I just he's so young, and the things he's done offensively are just you would expect of like a guy that's been in the league for a while, and I think there's nowhere to go but up with him. And he's proven he can do it.
I think the only reason that I didn't have him in that list is because I think the return for him would be incredibly high. And I don't think you try to trade Devers, but I think if someone calls and says, hey, here's a big league ready arm and 2 more elite prospects, I think you have to consider it. But he's as close to untouchable without being untouchable for me. You're not wrong. I just think that, like you mentioned, his age, I mean, he hasn't even hit arbitration yet. He's 22, 23 years old. Yeah. And he's already a top 20 offensive player in the league. So I don't think you can go into it making him untouchable, but I think you hang on to him unless you're completely floored by some crazy offer.
Yeah. I even am don't want to move him at all. Like JD is a guy that's kind of, I view JD kind of like that same thing. Unless you get the bag for him, I'm not moving JD because he's just a proven defense. He's older. So that's why I kind of not that he's old, but he's older. He's not 22. Right. So I'm more apt to trade him for the bag for him. But even him is he's a bat that's the only reason he lost the MVP 2 years ago is because Mookie Betts was on the team. And he's a awesome guy. But like you said, if you can get an ace starter, then maybe consider it. I moved JBJ. JBG is probably 5 on my list of guys not to trade, going down the list of people not to trade. Someone that we've talked about a lot on this pod is Benny Biceps. What is your opinion on Benny?
Man, I'm a big Benny fan, but he just hasn't taken that next step in his development. It's every year we're waiting for him to take that leap. I think he's a guy that, unfortunately could probably benefit from a change of scenery, like maybe he goes somewhere else and you get a good return for him because he's a proven, top third of the lineup hitter. And maybe you get something for him. I love him. I think he's a great player. He just hasn't taken that next step to go from good to elite. Who knows? A change of scenery might be good for him, and it might just be one of those trades that you make a trade and both teams come out on top.
I just don't see it this year, maybe next year, because he signed a 2-year deal in the offseason, right? Didn't he sign like a 2-year, something like that?
I think so. He might have signed a 2-year to avoid arbitration, maybe.
Yeah. He's just been so bad this year. I don't know what your return's going to be for him.
I also chalk up this year to, I don't really look at this year too much. One, he's been hurt, so he had a very limited at bats, but there are a ton of proven, like, good big league all-stars that are having bad years. There are a ton of guys that have come out of nowhere to have big years. It's such a small sample size, right? I mean, if you get off to a 2 for 25 start, you're digging out of the hole. I mean, that's 2 for 25 is like almost a quarter of the season already. So
that's true.
I think this year it's hard to chalk up a guy's numbers to the type of player he is, just because they had essentially 2 spring trainings. They had a spring training, then they had like 3 months off, and they did summer camp. Yeah. It's hard, but yeah, he's definitely left a lot to be desired, but I think chalking up this year is just, it's hard to chalk it up to anything other than a weird year.
But as a GM, I have a feeling like other GMs are going to say, like, if they ask about Benny and you say, oh, I want a top pitching prospect, they're going to be like, come on, man, he's batting 3 for like 500. Like he's under the Mendoza line. He's, been hurt. He's this, he's that. The team looking for the player is going to look at the negatives to try to get that low return for him. So that's what I'm nervous about too. Yeah,
I think if you were to pull a trade off for him, you're probably getting a guy coming back who's very similar, who's probably been a big leaguer or a fringe big leaguer for somewhere else, who was supposed to be good and just hasn't developed the way you want. I feel like that's the type of trade you might see with Benny, where you're like, you trade a guy who is good but hasn't been as good as you hoped to a team that is trading you someone that's good but hasn't been as good as they hoped. So I don't know that you're going to get back, and you're not getting a top 100 prospect back for Benny. Yeah. You're probably getting a guy who's been shuttled between AAA and the big leagues, and just, a lot like Nick Pivetta in a way, the guy that they just got for Workman and Embry. It's like a guy that has projectability to be a good big leaguer, but just hasn't clicked yet.
Well, mentioning that trade with Henry, there's been a couple in Workman. There's been a couple trades that we've had. Obviously, we had Moreland traded yesterday for a couple prospects. The Workman, Henry trade. What are your thoughts on those first couple trades? And we just had actually a big trade go down when we were talking, actually. Mike Clevenger.
Wow, to the Padres. Yeah.
Mike just got traded. So that's a big time trade. The Padres are loading up, man.
Padres are going all in, man. But yeah, the Red Sox trades, I think, for me, shout out Mitchie Two Bags. He's I
love him.
It's hard. We just talked about, how far the Red Sox have fallen in 2 years. It's hard when you keep seeing guys from that 2018 team leave. Right. Both Embry and Workman were guys that were in the pen on that team. And think about what Mitch did. Mitch signed here in 2017 on a 1-year deal, re-upped again in 2018, and he just kept re-signing on 1-year deals. And consummate professional, complete clubhouse, like, leader in that clubhouse. Really solid dude. Good for him, though. He's a guy that's probably at the end of his rope. He's probably only got a couple years left. So for him to do as much as he did for the city of Boston and the Red Sox organization, to get a chance to go out to San Diego and play in a beautiful city with a chance to get back to the playoffs, good for him. And it sounds like, from everything I've read, the return that the Red Sox are getting, those 2 prospects from the Padres were like number 16 and number 19 in their system, but they have one of the best systems in baseball. Right. It sounds like the center fielder that's coming back has a chance to be a legit leadoff hitter and stay at the center field position. And then the third baseman, Potts, it sounds like is a big time power guy. So hopefully one of them pan out, but if they both pan out, that's going to be a pretty good return for a guy who's essentially a rental player for the Padres. So I like that deal. And then, we'll see what comes of the pitchers that we got in the Phillies deal. But Pavetta's a guy that we just talked about, guys that have left a little bit to be desired. He's got the potential to be a middle of the rotation back end guy. And the prospect that they got is, by all accounts, pretty good. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, everything I've heard from the returns of those two deals has been good. Obviously, Pavetta's like a Benny guy that's like a prove-it kind of guy. He's kind of, supposed to be really good, and he's been up and down, like, career-wise. But I liked what we got from Moreland. Like, I loved Mitchie. He was one of my favorite guys on that team because, like you said, he kept signing one-year team-friendly deals just to stay. There was a lot of talks, was he going to retire this year? And then he ended up signing that one-year deal when we traded Mookie and we were kind of lost on like who's going to play first base because he didn't want to put Bobby up yet. And, he did so much for that 2018 team. But like you said, there's teams that like the Padres are trying to go all in and try to make a push, especially this year where, there's more teams in the playoffs. Anything can happen in this year because, like you said, some of the biggest names are having down years. So I'm happy that he gets to go to a team that has a chance to compete for a playoff spot, and we get to, that's the kind of person that I thought they were going to try to move, like at the deadline, like a much more than 1 year rental guy for a couple prospects to a team that needs like a power bat. Because I think he had them, and when we last did this, like when we were looking at the stats, I think it was like who's the MVP so far of the American League and the National League, and Mitch Moreland was leading the league in home runs, American League in home runs and RBIs. So like you're getting a power bat for a couple prospects, like it works out for both. I think it's a win-win for both teams that made that trade.
For sure. And for San Diego, they're getting a guy that's also a proven winner, right? Like he was here in 18. Think about that home run that he hit in the World Series. That was, who knows? Maybe they don't win the World Series if he doesn't hit that home run. That was a huge moment in that series. So I think you're getting a guy that's proven that he can play on the biggest stage in a huge market, right? San Diego is obviously not the same type of market as Boston, but he's proven that he can do it anywhere. So for them, I think it's a great deal. They were dealing from a system that was loaded with prospects. So for them, it was a good deal. And I think, he's going to fit in really well with what they have there. They have so much young talent. When you think about a guy like Tatis Jr., who's potentially the face of baseball already, but now you get another veteran in there to help that kid learn what it takes to do it day in, day out and how to go about his craft. I think that's a good deal for both teams.
And like you said, one of my buddies actually, because it came out, they were trading Moreland to San Diego, and one of my buddies, you mentioned Tatis, said, "Welcome to Boston, Tatis Jr." Added him on Twitter. I was like, if they can pull something off, it's not Mitch Moreland for Tatis, but yeah. But yeah, I'm like I said, I think that's the perfect guys that they're looking to trade. Is those 1 year guys. Is there anyone that you think, we've talked about who not to trade, we've talked about who's been traded. Is there anyone that you foresee that's going to be on the move that you can see being traded?
I think Matt Barnes is probably the most logical. Yeah. There's a guy that everyone is always looking for bullpen help. And when you're a team that's not going anywhere, like the Red Sox this year, there's no reason to hang on to a guy like that unless you have multiple more years of team control, which they don't.
Right.
So who knows there's going to be a bidding war for relief pitchers. So I think he's probably the most logical choice. If you had to put a gun to my head and say, who's the one guy that's going to get traded before the deadline today, it's Matt Barnes for sure. I think Brazier's in that list as well. Yeah. But Barnes has more of a track record. I think he's for sure the guy that teams are going to be calling for the most.
Barnes was one of my top guys that I thought, even in the beginning when they were talking trade deadline, he's like, he's a proven, like you said, a proven guy at the biggest stage, and everyone needs arms. No matter what level, you need arms to throw. The other guys that I kind of thought, and I don't know if you agree, is like a guy like Pilar, who's on a 1 year deal. He's having a great year offensively. Defensively, he makes a great catch every other night. Those guys that need like a Mitch Moreland type guy to fill in your right field or left, like center field, with some pop, like at any point in the lineup. I think he's a possible guy that could be traded because, it's a rental guy. It's a perfect rental guy for your team. And also, who I've been saying for a while, which I know people don't really want to, is Porcello. I feel like Porcello is a very capable guy to be traded because he's been. What?
We don't have Porcello anymore.
I'm sorry, not Porcello. Evaldi. I don't know. I don't know. I said Porcello.
Back to the future, Steve.
I wish we had Porcello. I was a big Porcello guy. I'll be honest. I'd rather Porcello than Evaldi. Even though Evaldi's having a decent year, Porcello is a guy that just grinds. But Evaldi, who's having a decent year, the Red Sox can get rid of that contract, and he can go on a team that's going to make much like in 2018 when he came here, he can go to a team and try to help him win a World Series. So
yeah, I think he's going to be hard to move though, because there's probably 3 more years on that deal. So
I think it was a 4-year deal, and he's in year 2.
So he's got 2. Yeah, so he's got 2 more after this year. Yeah, so he's going to be hard to move. It's tough with Nate. Like, you think about that signing is probably what precipitated all of these moves, because he was the guy that kind of pushed them over the top financially. And I remember when they signed him, in the very moment, I was like, oh, awesome. That guy was a hero in 18.
Yeah.
That game, the game that they lost, that he pitched all those innings and extra innings, they don't win the World Series if he doesn't do that.
Right.
So I totally understood it. But at the same time, that was a decision that was made probably unfortunately with the heart and not the head, because that was the move that really put them in a bind financially. And now you see that we've had to lose some quality pieces. If they could move him, I think that'd be fantastic. I think if you move him, you're probably going to have to eat some money, and you're probably not going to get back much of a return.
Right.
But if it helps you clear a little bit of money off the top of the luxury tax, then maybe that's a move that Heim's looking to make.
I was so against the signing of Nate Evaldi. I was like, because I saw you had Mookie, Devers coming up in future, but you had Devers eventually. You had Bogey. You had Porcello, who we were just talking about. You already had
Erod's going to be up in a year or 2.
Erod's going to be up. Did they already sign Chris Sale? I think they signed him at the beginning of the year. No. I can't remember if it was at the beginning. I think it was right after that World Series they signed him.
Yeah, I don't remember the timeline. That might have been more closer to spring training. I honestly don't remember.
Then they had Chris Sale. They had big contracts on the books that they were either going to have to sign or already had signed. And it made, I'm a big believer, if you win, like Evaldi, who was a hero in that World Series, you don't win it without him. There's nothing wrong with saying with a guy like that, thank you for the ring, and thank you for your time here, but we're not going to sign you. It was the same thing with, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on his name. Who won the MVP of the World Series?
Steve Pierce.
Same thing. They gave him a pretty big contract for what he was. He was in AAA for most of the year. So it was they were, and then after the Pierce signing, they threw that huge deal at Sale before his deal was even up, and he ends up getting hurt. And it was you're throwing all this money into these players. Mookie, you still haven't signed Mookie, Bogart. That's why I was excited when they signed Bogarts right after that, and you locked him up for a few years. But you still had Mookie, Bogarts, Devers. You had the future of your franchise. And so I personally think you trade Evaldi because he only had that. You paid him, gave him that huge contract for 3 months of baseball. That's what you did.
It's crazy because you think about that was a decision that was, like I said, it was probably made with the heart and not the head.
Right.
You wanted to reward a guy, but then you look at the flip side and a guy who was just back in town yesterday, Brock Holt.
Right.
And I know that they're different situations. Evaldi's a pitcher, Holt's a utility guy, and we have a dozen of those in the system and on the big league team right now. But I mean, it was just not a good decision to bring back Evaldi. I mean, you're right. You tip your cap to him and you say thank you for the World Series ring, but you've been in the big leagues for 6 or 7 years now, and you've never proven that you can stay healthy for a full 162. You were great when you were here. Thank you. Here's your ring. Good luck in free agency. Yeah,
and you wish him luck. It's nothing wrong with I think, he didn't make that big of an impact during that run, but Ian Kinsler. A veteran guy that came in, gave some veteran leadership, helped. He never won before, so he was trying to win. And he left without even hesitation. He didn't have a good postseason, so I think that's why that kind of made the blow a little easier. But he was an all-star years prior, and we let him go without even giving it a second thought. We gave him his ring, said thank you, and then seal it. There's nothing wrong, I think, with doing that. Unless you're a Mookie Betts and the homegrown, probably second best player in the league, there is a problem with that. But
yeah, just everything about it seemed weird. You know, I mean, you had Price, you had Sale under contract before you even re-upped his deal.
Right.
You had Porcello, who still had another year on his deal, and you had Erod, who you had under control for I think 3 more years.
Right.
So you already had 4 established starters. I mean, you probably could have gone out and signed a free agent to be your 5 starter at a bargain. You know, I say a bargain, but $5 or $6 million,
right,
compared to what you gave Eovaldi, which was I think 17.5 or $18.5 million. So yeah, just I think kind of poor money management there, and unfortunately just a decision that was made, you know, because of what he had done in the postseason.
But like we said, that was like, you know, Dombrowski, he liked to spend money, and like you can point the blame at him for that, but like that coming into it, we had a pretty good, when he came here, we had a pretty good farm system. It wasn't probably the best, greatest farm system, but we had some studs down there. Mm-hmm. And we knew he was coming here to make moves and spend a lot of money and win a championship. And that's just his MO. And it's the same thing with like Bloom. He's a save guy. So it's not that I blame him, because that's like, what did you expect? But at the same time, like those two, I didn't like the Chris Sale signing early. You didn't have to sign him early. You could have went into free agency and signed him then. I think that was more of we can't sign Mookie early, so let's sign a big name free agent early, and you just picked the wrong guy. But the Eovaldi and the Pierce signing were just that had to be over $20 to $25 million on their cap. That
right.
Pierce is retired. Eovaldi's never played a full season. He's dealing this year, but
just went on the DL again.
Just went on the DL. It's like it's crazy. He's can't stay healthy. So I hated that signing. So I wouldn't mind for him to be traded. But like you said, it's going to be hard to get rid of him. But you never know. If someone is desperate for an starting arm, capable guy, and they may try to trade a couple prospects, and we'll eat some money to get rid of him. As I mentioned, stepping away from baseball, we mentioned that you're in our fantasy football league.
Yes.
Welcome. It was great to have a good draft. We haven't come out with the video yet, but video's done, but we haven't come out with the draft video yet. It was good for you to meet. You got to meet the Big Red Zone, some of the Big Red Zone family. What were your thoughts from that draft night?
It was sweet. A lot of good
Without
dudes.
giving anything away. Don't give anything away. Who picked and what. But
I did not expect you to surround yourself with so many good people, Steve-O. I'm surprised.
You think so highly of me.
Yeah. No, but it was good. A lot of good dudes in the league. I knew a couple of them. Draft was great. I thought it went really. I mean, we flew through the draft, which was really cool to see.
Yeah,
but,
it was like 45 minutes they took to do that draft.
Yeah, which tells me that there was a bunch of guys that were prepared and had done their homework and knew what they wanted to do. So I know personally, I'm happy with my draft.
I was happy with mine too, minus one player that we're going to talk about. But John was shaking. You can't see John, but John was shaking his head about the research thing. John just went into it cold.
Perfect. That's fine too.
And someone else that will remain nameless until the draft video comes out. I think he went in, either he did bad research, or he went in pretty cold. One of our good friends.
I think I know who you're talking about. I bet you he did research, but he was probably looking at like a 2014 fantasy draft manual.
Yep. There was not to get off on tip, but this is a funny story. In one of the leagues, John, first year ever doing fantasy football, we did a league together with some of his friends from his grade, and I joined it. And it's a great league. And one of the kids who had the second pick in the draft did research, but he looked at the wrong year. I'll leave him nameless. I don't want to say his name, and I mentioned going into it, I said, hey, I walked in through the door and said, just so you guys know, I'm taking this guy. I'll say the name in a second. I'm taking this guy third pick overall. I had the third or fourth pick. I'm taking him. I'm giving you guys just as a joke, and everyone was kind of laughing. And he kind of sat there and took it in. He took him, and with the second pick, this was 3 years ago, Jamal Charles. With the second pick in the draft, he took Jamal Charles. I felt instantly bad, and he's like, no, I did research. He says he's like the top person to pick, running back to pick. And I was like, what? When did you look at that? From like 3 years ago? And he said, oh, yeah, I looked at the date on the article, and it was like 3 years prior. He went on to then pick, at the time they were really good, but Stephen Gostkowski and Adam Vinatieri with his 4th and 5th round picks. He tanked. Tried to get a good draft pick.
That's not bad. He's going to make sure that there's no good kickers for anyone else.
That's what he said. He said, "I'll take trade offers for Stephen Gostkowski." And at the time, Gostkowski was the greatest kicker, like fantasy kicker. But it was so fun. Like Jamal Charles with the 2nd overall pick. I think I ended up getting. This was the year before Bell set out. I think I got Le'Veon Bell at like 3 or 4.
Crazy.
It was so funny. But the guy I took, and I said I didn't want to take him. I think I went on record saying I do not want to take him, but he's here at like later in the draft. Leonard Fournette was cut today. Doing this on Monday the 31st. But he was cut today. What is your reactions from the panel here from Leonard Fournette being cut?
Yeah, it's what a job the Jaguars have done to bundle like multiple top 5 picks. I mean, you pass on Pat Mahomes and Deshaun Watson to take Leonard Fournette because you have Blake Bortles, and now you don't have either one of those guys. Like, what a poorly run organization. But yeah, I mean, he's a good player. I think the way that the NFL is going nowadays, he's not really the typical running back that you're looking to build around. I mean, maybe 5 to 10 years ago, Leonard Fournette's a guy that you're penciling in as a top 1 or 2 running back in the entire game. His skill set is there, but doesn't offer you much in the passing game. They're a team that's clearly going nowhere. I think I saw on Twitter this morning that Doug Marrone said that they couldn't even get a 6th round pick for him. So I think that should tell you what people think of him around the league. Plus, he sounds like he's kind of a headache to deal with. So when you're not going to be a guy that's on the field producing, no one's going to really want to deal with that.
Yeah. I was kind of shocked, but after like what you said, if Doug Marrone said he couldn't even get a 6th round pick for him, it makes sense. They just cut him. Probably people were mainly saying that because now they can go out and offer him like a cheap deal, prove it deal, and for nothing. But I was shocked. I was shocked that they cut him because he doesn't provide much in the passing game, but he's a heck of a rushing back. Like he's a bulldog. He will run through a wall and he'll get you he gets a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns. But my one thing with him is health. Like I think his health has been in question. But I think some team will take a flyer on him for this season and a 1-year prove it deal for this year.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Any predictions where he goes?
Hard to say right now. I mean, who knows? I mean, does he stay in that division and go to somewhere like Indianapolis or Tennessee and maybe try to imagine tandeming him with Derrick Henry? I mean, holy smokes, that's just 2 battering rams. I mean, I think that's a fit where they like to run downhill.
Right.
So I could maybe see the Titans, maybe taking a flyer, but who knows at this point? I definitely, he's not coming to New England.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard people say like, oh, he could come to New England, and I wouldn't mind it for a team like if you got him for cheap. You'd probably end up cutting Lamar Miller, which I would be fine if you traded from Lamar to Leonard Fournette. I'd be totally fine with that. But you're right. They do have Sony, who's, we don't know his health status. Damian Harris, who's a top pick. James White, who's going to be your passing catching back. I think he would actually fit in well with the Patriots system because they're a very split back system. They have one guy that's just a bull rusher and one guy that catches passes, which I think benefits Fournette because Fournette can just be the downhill guy and James White can be the pass catching guy, and they don't really try to hide it. So it works out pretty well. And he's, I think, not so much durable, but he's obviously bigger and stronger than Sony. So I think he would fit that role a little. I think he would make up for a lack of offensive line. Probably, I think he would do better here. But I can see him going to, I don't think Tennessee, but I can see him going to somewhere to help one of these veteran guys around the league, like a Todd Gurley, who is made of glass, and if he's out, then they're screwed in the running game. So I could see him going to Atlanta. I could see him going to.
What about New Orleans?
I could see him going to New Orleans with.
He played at LSU. Imagine handcuffing him with Alvin Kamara. That's a pretty dynamic backfield. I
could see the other guy I was just thinking of was. Who was it? It was. Well, I was looking through those teams earlier. Like, I could honestly see him anywhere. Like the Jets, who don't like Le'Veon Bell, I could see them kind of taking him instead of Le'Veon Bell. I could see him going to Miami, who don't really. They're kind of splitting it there. Who was the guy I was talking about? I forget the team. It was a team that, like, it's a Todd Gurley type player who's always getting hurt. Arizona with David Johnson. I could see him going to Arizona. Because they're not really not Arizona, Houston. Yeah. Because they're not really sold on David Johnson. So I could see that happening. There's not really a lot of teams that have, like Indy. I don't see them going to because they have Mack and they just drafted Taylor. Yeah. KC has their young running back that they just drafted, who is in the first round pick. So I think they're going to stick with him. Like, I don't see him going there. Like, there's a lot of teams that have young running backs, but I can see him going as a guy that's like a split back guy that's either going to be because someone's injured or like a Patriot system that's just naturally split back works. Because you're right, his hands are terrible. He's not a really great pass catching guy.
Right.
Real quick before we move on to the NBA, you're a Patriots guy.
Yeah.
What are your predictions? Either you can say successful or not, or record. What do you think the Patriots are this year going into the season?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be hard to say. I think, the reports out of training camp were pretty good. Damian Harris has had a good camp.
Yeah.
The defenses look good still. Some of the young guys like Kyle Duggar, their first pick has looked good. It's really hard when you lose a guy like Tom Brady, who's essentially the Michael Jordan of this sport. But until someone comes and takes it from them, like, do you really trust the Buffalo Bills yet? So It wouldn't shock me if they won the division at 10-6. I think, Cam is going to add some nice wrinkles to the offense if he is indeed the starting quarterback. I think you're going to see a somewhat traditional Patriots offense while also adding the wrinkle of the quarterback run that we just never had with Tom. So, look, there's still a lot of good players in that locker room. And until someone comes and takes that division from them, it's hard to pick against them. Maybe that's just some homerism, but I could see them winning the division, at worst finishing second. I just don't know that the Jets and the Dolphins have enough to make that jump yet. I guess for me, it's just how healthy the Bills stay and how they do in making that jump from a young team to now a team that's supposed to be a contender. So I think first or second in the AFC East. I don't know that they have enough horses to run with the Ravens and the Chiefs this year, and even the Texans for that matter. But I think that's still a good football team we have in Foxborough for sure.
If you had to guess number-wise, what would you say? 10-6? Would that be your guess for?
Yeah, I think I've kind of settled into that, like 9-7, 10-6. Yeah. I maybe like everything goes right for them, they go 11-5, but I don't think you're going to see the typical 14-2, 13-3 that we've kind of grown accustomed to. So I'll go 10-6.
We do this all the time. We look at the schedule and we kind of go through it and who we think would win or lose. And I think last time I did it, I settled, and again, homerism a little bit. I'll admit it. I think I settled on 11-5. I think they could go 11-5. Maybe I forget if it was I picked out 5 losses or 4 losses. I can't remember. I think it was 5 losses because they play the Ravens, they play the 49ers, they play the Chiefs, they play those teams that are like, you hope you win, you hope
Super
you're in
Bowl
it.
contenders,
but, right? They're top of the line teams that we're playing. But I think that they have a real shot at I think they beat both Miami games. I think they can beat both Jets games. I think they split with Buffalo. I think that's not too crazy to say that they go, 5-1 in the division. I don't think that's crazy. Maybe something happens, you go 4-2, but I think 5-1 isn't crazy to think in the division. And then that's 5 wins right there, and they can manage a couple. They play the Chargers That's a game that, like, you know, you can find wins there. So people are saying like they're going 8-8 or 7-9. I think you're crazy. I don't see that. Even with Stidham, I had them going 500. Like I think that they can find 8 wins in that schedule. And now I know we're moving pretty quickly here, but NBA with the Celtics, they won, you know, pretty convincingly their first round. And game one, they won game one pretty convincingly against the Raptors, which I was kind of surprised about. Thought it'd be a closer game. I had them winning, but I didn't think it would be, you know, 18-point game. Thoughts on the Celtics? Do you think they have what it takes to go this year, or do you think?
Tell you what, they've looked really good here in the bubble since we got to the postseason. Huh? I mean, obviously the Sixers were banged up with no Simmons and Embiid kind of being a little bit under the. A little bit injured. I think the Celtics absolutely can make a run. I tell you what, you hate to like look past the series, but I think that Miami-Milwaukee series is going to be very interesting. Miami has played Milwaukee pretty tough. But I like the Celtics' ability to defend. They can get out and run with Jalen and Jason and Marcus and guys like that. And, I think the guy that's been the most surprising for me has been Daniel Tice. I always knew he was a good player, but what he did against Embiid, he looked good yesterday. He had a ton of rebounds early. I mean, he's just kind of an X factor. If Kemba can stay healthy and continue to give them, you know, anywhere from 18 to 25 a night with 5 to 8 assists, I mean, they're going to be hard to shut down. I didn't know that they were going to be able to win it all this year. And obviously bubble life is different than if you're playing in Toronto where that home court advantage is different. But I mean, they took a pretty good swing at the champs yesterday and landed a few good punches. I thought the Celtics looked as good as I've seen them. I haven't seen a ton of games this year, but they looked really, really strong yesterday. I would not be shocked to see them come out of the East.
Looking at that team, I always said in the bubble, the major factor with that team is health. Kemba, you know, he has knee problems. We know Gordon's problem with, you know, obviously his ankle. And now, you know, the other injury that he had in the other game. Marcus is, you know, he was banged up this year. Jalen was banged up this year. So we had a lot of health issues. And like where we started to, I think we plateaued a little bit during the regular season. And it was like, if you looked at it, they were like, oh, the Celtics don't have it. But you looked at it, we played in the regular season, I want to say maybe under 10 games with our starting group in there.
Right.
So it's like, you didn't know. Like, and when we did, we were like, probably, if you say 9 games, we were 8-1 or 9, like it was pretty dominant. I think if they're healthy, they have a chance to win it all. I really do. Yeah. And that's not even just a homer in me, just the way Tatum's playing, the way the X factor, I think, is Jaylen Brown's playing. Yeah. He's playing like a superstar. If Tatum wasn't there, he looks like he could carry the team to play. Right. And you have both those young guys on the team, and you figure in a Marcus Smart who's a defensive monster and adding offense in there too. You have Tice, who's an X factor, who's handling the big guys, because when you play their starting group, there's not a lot of size. You have, you know, you're playing a combination of Kemba, Smart, Hayward, Brown, and Tatum. 4 of those 5 are always playing at the same time. And then you have Tice, who's got to play a guy like Embiid. They're going to have to play a guy like, you know, if they make it to the next year, like, you know, you don't want to look past, but, you know, guys that they could potentially play like Giannis or a guy like AD, Abayu, like there's huge best big guys in the game, and they're going to have to play these guys. And right now, based on what I've seen, Tice has done a great job defensively. He knows his role. You know, he rebounds and, you know, blocks shots, plays defense at the rim. You know, he doesn't have to score anything for me. He you know, he try to get like 5 to 10 points, but really you have scorers on the team. Jalen and Tatum are going to get you, you know, 20 points each. Hayward can get you to 15 to 20. Kemba can get you 15 to 20. Like, you have the points, and I think that's that's another factor in that team is he's kind of settled in his role as a defensive guy, which is great. So I agree. Like, it makes me nervous because it reminds me a lot. It's a different team and a different feel, obviously, but it reminds me a lot of last year with after we won game 1 against Milwaukee, right? We blew them out. Everyone, Paul Pierce had the famous saying, "It's over. They're gonna win. Yeah. They're sweeping them." I hope tomorrow. I think tomorrow or today is game 2. Tomorrow, yeah. That's going to be a big test, like, because they're a championship team, and they're going to come out with punching back from that for game 2, and it's going to be interesting if they can take it and play through it, and that will be a test. That will show if the series is going to be quick or it's going to be over soon.
Right. I mean, I also think Toronto isn't going to shoot as poorly as they did in game 1. I mean, they were terrible. They couldn't buy a basket. So you do have to factor in the fact that Toronto did not play their best game.
Plus
and some of that you can credit to the defense, but there were a lot of open looks that team missed that they won't typically miss.
Plus the Lowry injury, like, that's big for them too. He's got to be 100% healthy for them to have a chance in this series.
Right.
Real quick, when we're closing up, before we get to people's topic, who's your pick to win it all?
I think the Clippers. The Clippers, man. Kawhi, for me, is – I don't know if there's a guy in the league that I'd rather have in a big moment than Kawhi Leonard. Now, I say that with the asterisk that Paul George is going to have to figure it out if they're going to win it all.
Right.
I just think that guy's too good of a player to not figure it out. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't figure it out, they're going to be gone pretty quick here. But I like him making the adjustment, being able to shoot a little bit better. And when you have those two guys rolling, Kawhi to me is an absolute difference maker. He always finds a way to make the play when he needs to. So I say it with the caveat that I think Paul George is going to figure it out. And if he does, the Clippers are going to win it.
I had the Clippers going to the finals way back when, so I have a feeling they're going to be – I had Celtics Clippers in the finals. So I do think that they have a chance to do it. Paul George has got to figure it out. But the one thing that I think is going for them is they have this tough series with Luka and the Mavericks, because that's probably going to be one of the toughest teams they play, because of how special that Luka is, and that team's playing very well coached, and just a well-run team. They got tested in the first round, so they're going to be, when their back's against the wall in the next round or the finals, they're going to have that already. Like, I think they're better battle tested, I guess, for going into like those higher pressure situations. So that's what we had. We're going to get into our final topic, which is always a favorite of ours, is the people's topic.
People's topic.
All right, people's topic. As we said, you can write in every week to our Instagram, Twitter at Big Red Zone. If you have a question, topic, whatever you want us to talk about, we will. You can send it at any point of the week. You send it on YouTube, Big Red Zone. So James, you read it because I don't have Discord up.
Awesome, I can do that.
I wasn't.
Really, you don't?
I don't have it.
Sending you.
Yeah, I don't have it. That's.
So from Aleps 2 they're asking, what's the opinion on the Mitch Moreland trade?
Well, we kind of already talked about that. Yeah, I think we spoke enough about that. Thanks, Laps.
That's a Laps. Another question comes from Matt Downing 9. Will the Pats have more than 5 wins? I think we already kind of covered that one.
We already covered.
I said 9.
More than 9 wins or 5?
I said more than 9 wins. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said 5.
Oh, sorry, my bad. It was 9. I would say
so. I think so. Andy, you said 10,
I think so.
10 wins. I think they do have 10. Wow, we already covered all.
But here's an actual good question. I like this one from Joseph Celio.
Oh, a fan favorite. It comes in every
week. Rank your
week.
top 5 NFL head coaches heading into this season.
Top 5 NFL coaches. Do you mean based on like their? Are we just saying like coaching, like their coaching ability, or how they're going to be successful in the team? I think he means
top 5 NFL coaches heading into this season.
Who's our top 5? Okay. I think anytime he's coaching in the league, I think you got to go Bill number 1. I don't think that's.
Yep.
I don't think that's crazy to think. Now, I think at 2, I've always been a big fan of this guy, and I think he's going to have a chance with his quarterback back. I like Mike Tomlin. I'm a big fan of Mike Tomlin. I think he's a great coach in the league. I think he'll do well. At 3, I think I'll go with Andy Reid, just based on he's coming off a Super Bowl win. He's always been that close, and he just couldn't figure it out, and he finally got a win. So he's also has one of the top teams, like best quarterback. So I'd give it to him. The 4 and 5, I'm going to go with teams that may not have the greatest success, but I just love their coaching. 4 is Vrabel, what he was able to do with Ryan Tannehill. And, Derrick Henry's a great running back, but with that team, with Ryan Tannehill and a bunch of rookie, like his best receiver is a rookie receiver, like what he was able to do with that team is unbelievable. And he has the cojones to make like a big time call and a big time decision. That play that went the direct snap to Derrick Henry for the touchdown throw and like the biggest moment of the Super Bowl in the goal line was absolutely never would have saw that coming. So I think he has his guy. I think he knows how to connect to players well. And so I'd go with Mike Vrabel, and a guy that probably not a lot of people think of, and he should have been considered in the coach of the year, but he just didn't make the playoffs, is Brian Flores. What he's doing in Miami that's the only reason. Brian Flores is the reason I'm kind of nervous about the Miami Dolphins, because what he's able to do with his players, and he made lemons out of absolute dog crap. Like he was able to make they were purposely tanking and they were finding ways to win. And I credit that a lot to the coaching. So I'd probably go Brian Flores. So I'd go Belichick, Tomlin, Andy Reid, Vrabel, Flores. That's my top.
What about John Harbaugh?
See, now you're picking up on what I was.
I like John too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think he gets lucky with some, not lucky because he's a good coach, but the years that he's really successful are the years that he has an MVP or defensive player of the year. Like,
all right.
He had Lamar Jackson, which bailed them out of a lot of games last year. A lot of it was probably scheming that he had defensively, because they had a great defense. They always have a great defense. Yeah. But it was between Harbaugh and Flores for me, and I just think Flores wins some games. I don't think players win games, but a lot of that to do with Miami success last year is Flores.
I really like Flores too. I think another guy that maybe doesn't crack the top 5, but it's Kyle Shanahan out in San Francisco.
Yeah. Yep.
He's been doing it for a long time as a coordinator. And I mean, we all love Jimmy G being New England guys, but I mean, he took a team with Jimmy G to the Super Bowl last year. He just finds a way to get offensive players who maybe aren't as heralded as you expect. He gets them in position to make plays. So Shanahan's, I think, a guy. Yep. I think I would probably take out, yours is pretty good. I would probably take out Tomlin and Flores and go Shanahan and Harbaugh, but I don't think you can go wrong with those two picks.
Right. Now,
that's hilarious.
I think James and I are on the same page.
You have the exact same list I was going to have. I don't know if in the same order, but we're on the same page.
The thing I would say about the only negative, I was thinking the same guys as Shanahan. Like you said, he brought that team to the Super Bowl, which probably had, they had good players, but they had a running back by committee, and every week, one person had over 100. A different guy had over 100 yards. Yeah. And Jimmy G, we love him in New England, but he's not the greatest quarterback. Like, when you're looking at Mahomes versus Garoppolo, it's pretty outweighed. My one knock on Kyle Shanahan is, and it's proven in big moments in big games, he doesn't make the right call. Like he was the play caller in the Atlanta Super Bowl, which we all remember
no doubt.
That was awesome for us. And in last year's Super Bowl, they just couldn't find a way to get a first down when it was like crunch time. You know what I mean? Right. So sometimes play calling in big games is kind of spotty, but again, he took a team that by rights, shouldn't have been in the Super Bowl, and they had great success. So, and I think again, they're going to have great success this year too. So can't go wrong with Shanahan and Harbaugh in that top 5 too. So Joseph Celia, always a good question.
Yeah.
He gives us, he does his homework, great questions. Make sure tell Joseph to write in his top 5. We want to hear his top 5 too. I don't know if we'll read it, but no, we'll see what we can do.
You guys go to the Fours when you go to Fenway?
I love the Fours is at the Garden.
Oh, they just closed today.
The Fours closed?
As of like 30 minutes.
Did you hear that? The Fours?
We're blaming it all on COVID.
Yeah. No kidding.
Wow,
that's crazy.
We break the news.
Wow, breaking
ending
sad
this on
news.
a terrible note.
Yeah, that's real.
That's
I went there.
Right
I went there for at least once or twice a year when I go to Celtics games. That was
44 years.
44 years in their location.
Wow,
man.
Wow.
Now they might open up somewhere else down the road. That might be.
It's probably just rent in Boston right now, and
it's stupid.
Like with no money coming in, they're mainly a bar, so like they probably don't have any income coming in. So that's sad. Thanks, John. We're on a high note with Joseph.
You know what though? I'm willing to say they were so successful they'll probably open up a new place somewhere else. It's very probable. It's
gonna be tough, but we've seen a lot of those bars. Like the what was the one by Fenway that just closed? Like at the beginning of COVID.
Yeah, I don't remember. But
I think so.
It's hard for bars to stay in business, man. This is tough. This is killing people.
But thanks, John, for bringing up that sad moment at the end. Yeah, might as well rest in peace, Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman. We might as well just throw on all the sad news at the beginning of the podcast.
Anything else, John? Did someone's dog die or something? Or
yeah, we'll save that for post. We'll save the pity party for after. But on a great note, it was great having you on. It was great having you on. I know you said you have meetings for Plymouth all day. I hope you guys play. I hope that's what the meetings are about, trying to figure out how to get you guys on the field. And hopefully you have a great success this year. I know you were talking about you had a big recruiting class last year, and you have a big one this year, so you're going to have a lot of talent on that team. Plus all the seniors that didn't graduate last year, we have another year. So hopefully you have a lot of success and come back anytime. We'll mention you on the pod when we talk about fantasy football. So keep an ear out.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. It was good talking some sports. It's good to have sports back for sure. So next step is us getting on the field, and we're keeping our fingers crossed. We've got all sorts of processes and procedures in place that hopefully we're able to follow so that we can get the guys back out on the field. I know that they're missing playing, so we're gonna do everything we can to get them on the field. But in the meantime, we'll look forward to some fantasy sports for sure.
And I know you missed my face, so that's the only reason why.
I do.
As always, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, at Big Red Zone, on YouTube, typing in Big Red Zone, follow our channel, subscribe to our channel, and hit the like button on this video and all the other episodes and videos that we have. Make sure you tell a friend join the pod, and you can follow Plymouth State Baseball on Instagram too. We'll shout out Andy again. Don't follow his Instagram. Follow the actively. If you do right now, unfollow. I'm ready to go unfollow on Instagram right now.
Avoid that.
Rest in peace, John Thompson.
Jeez. Oh yeah, John Thompson, Georgetown.
I saw that, man.
Yeah, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
What a week for Hall of Fame college basketball coaches, huh? John Thompson and Lute Olson in a week.
I know. It was just a terrible week this week. Thanks for bringing it up. We were on such a high.
It's only Monday.
It's only Monday. And you know what? I thought I got us back on the positive. We had the little banter about don't follow Andy's Instagram, and then you had to throw that little one in there. Yeah. Oh yeah. So we'll just show this before I close out. My lovely girlfriend of 3 years made us a little present for the pod. I don't know if you can see it, Andy. Show you.
It's a little. I have to bring it way closer.
Yeah, I'll just show the camera first, and I'll show Andy. It's the new spot. I guess they're doing this thing where they do arts and crafts. You make a Spotify thing on a picture frame. So that's going to be up in the studio now. Shout out to her. And we're going to have that. I don't think you can see it on camera. So we'll find a place. We'll find a better place for it to show it off. But thank you for bringing it back up on a high note. Before John can say anything depressing, as great as always having John. James, welcome. Great to have you back on the show, and have a great week. And stay safe, everyone. I guess what do I say? Have a great week. I say have a great week, everyone. That's what I say. All right, have a great week, everyone. Yeah, rough close.